JC Abbott is joining us from 3Down Nation. Little known fact, JC Abbott and I have never spoken until right now. This is inaugural twirl. How's it going out there, JC? You should see the snow that's coming down in downtown Regina. Like, it is coming down, and it's minus 30 with the wind chill. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel great that I'm living out here in BC. It's a little foggy outside, a little chilly, but there's no snow. So I'm happy with that decision.
I talked to a guy that's up in Whistler today. He said down the mountain, I've never been to Whistler.
Neither have I.
He said it's been raining for like 10 days straight. In fact, the roads are closed.
In the valley, it's been flooding recently. I'm right on the water. I can see the American border. I can see Mount Baker in Washington State. I can see the ocean out of my front door. It's been more foggy and a light drizzle for us out here. But the valley's been hit pretty hard.
Oh, that's making me jealous for starters.
Not me.
All right, we brought you on here. Story came out this morning. I read it. I'm like, we got to get him on. CFL closes the investigation into alleged tampering by the Argonauts with the Riders. What can you tell us? What did you find out, JC?
Well, the facts that we know about this case are fairly simple. There was an investigation into the allegations that the Toronto Argonauts tampered with Corey Mace, that they reached out to him regarding their head coach position without first getting express written permission from the Saskatchewan Roughriders shortly after the Grey Cup in November. The league investigated, and they have closed that investigation. The CFL says that they do not disclose whether there's any punishments handed out to teams or personnel in these situations, and the Toronto Argonauts declined to comment when asked if there was any punishments handed out. So whether there was a fine or some sort of punishment is unclear at this time. A lot of people are going to speculate that this is connected to the fact that John Murphy, the assistant general manager, is not brought back in Toronto. I want to be very clear here. We do not know that these two things are connected. This is a 5-13 football team. They very well could have been making those decisions in their front office for entirely different reasons. All we know is the investigation right now is closed.
Okay, Sharky didn't think it was odd. I think it's odd that CFL doesn't disclose any discipline. For the casual fan, is that the norm? Are you cool with that?
I'm not cool with that. It's certainly what the norm has been, or what at least what the CFL policy is when it comes to team or league punishments. Although they do occasionally break those conditions, right? When there's salary cap violations, they let that be known to the public. When they're taking away draft picks, that is informed. But in these lesser situations, very rarely do we get to see what happens behind the curtains. I think the same could be said a few years ago with the Chad Kelly lawsuit situation, right? That was all tied up from a player perspective with a suspension. We don't know if any punishments were handed down to the Argonauts or if they got a slap on the wrist or anything like that, because the league doesn't reveal that information. Personally, I think if Commissioner Stuart Johnston is committed to his vision of transparency, as he has said in the past, this is something that needs to happen. Fans need to know when there's a situation that it's being properly dealt with.
Thank you. That was going to be my follow-up right there. Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question to you. How big does Toronto think their britches are that they can go after the coach that just won the Grey Cup and had just signed a contract extension that somehow they're going to be that much sweeter an environment to go to?
Shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Shoot your shot.
What do they think of themselves? Like, tell me.
Well, I think it's a valid thing to shoot your shot, as you just said, right? When you want to be the best, you go after the best. And I think there was a conversation at that time that it would not have just been Corey Mace as head coach of the Toronto Argonauts. They would have potentially added on an additional title, whether that be actual GM or assistant GM, co-GM, whatever the structure would have been. It would have had a football operations title, which would have been accompanied by a promotion and potentially a pay raise. Now, Corey Mace has indicated he's not really interested in being a GM at this point in his career. I think it was unwise for the Argonauts to make this advance if they, in fact, did do what they are alleged to have done. But you go after the best. I mean, look, Saskatchewan did it less than a decade ago when they went after Chris Jones on the eve of him winning a Grey Cup
don't worry
with
about
Edmonton, right?
Where are you finding this old garbage from? Where is this old news, fake news coming from?
Do you think? I don't know what it was. Sharky's thinking that it was an indirect.
I'm thinking it was an indirect.
Total speculation on what we're thinking. I think there's something there. Do you feel that this is maybe more common than we think?
I think in general, tampering, whether it's exposed or not, is fairly common in the CFL, and it's almost unavoidable to a point, right? This is a 9-team league. Everyone has worked with everybody. The players, there's like 10 agents that represent the entire league. They represent the coaches too. Like conversations are happening behind the scenes, whether they're official or unofficial or inferences, all of which is illegal under the tampering policy. But they do occur. Now, whether punishments come down for this frequently, with this league policy, we don't know the full details. What I can tell you is I did the research. The last time somebody was fined for tampering with a coach was 2011. That was the Toronto Argonauts getting fined for poaching Chris Jones, the defensive coordinator, away from Calgary. Jim Barker was the GM in Toronto at the time. Scott Milanovich was the head coach. That was just $5,000 that they were fined for. They've since beefed up the policy since then. It can be a fine of up to $50,000, a loss of a first-round draft pick now. But it's interesting that it's been more than a decade since any official fine has been handed down for tampering.
Again, I don't think it was a direct reach out and said, we want you to come be the head coach of the Toronto Argonauts. I think it was congratulations. You still look great in double blue. If you right. I think it was that sort of reach out, or
you thought it was a guy, a different guy,
right? Like reaching out to his agent, congratulate Corey, right? Tell him he looked great in double blue. Yeah. I think that's the sort of scenario it was, and that's why I think it's not being brushed under the rug, but just forgot about.
Maybe we'll find out one day. While we have you here, I want to ask you a couple other CFL things. Bo Levi, 2 years. Did that come as a surprise? Did you think it would be a year by year?
No, I think 2 years is a good deal, right? Bo Levi Mitchell deserves to get paid, right? He took less after all the struggles that he had, and he's been fantastic the past 2 seasons. Twice a finalist for MOP, 2 times over 5,000 yards. He has not shown any signs of slowing down, and I think if you've got a chance to lock up a franchise quarterback like that, you do it, and you do it for 2 years. There's no reason to take it 1 year at a time. He gets knocked for being an older guy because he did have that period of his career when he struggled with those injuries. But in the big scheme of things, he's not as old as Zach. He's not as old as Trevor, right? He's sort of in the middle of the pack when it comes to quarterback ages, and I think he's got more in the tank.
I agree with you. I think it's a great move by Hamilton, and I think it's a sign how hard it is to develop and get a young quarterback up to speed. The only one that's really impressed that's come on is Alexander out of Montreal, but everybody else has taken a while to get ramped up to the point where you're really happy with what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a long-term process with those quarterbacks. And Taylor Powell, I think a lot of people think that he is a guy who could potentially start in the CFL, but it's been a few years now, and I don't think they see anything from him that would force out an MOP finalist, right? They might like him a lot. We'll see what happens with his contract negotiations, as he is a pending free agent, and frankly might be the best remaining free agent quarterback available on the market because everybody else has re-signed. Somebody may want to take a shot at him as the next guy, but at this point, there is nothing guaranteed. You stick with a proven commodity in Bo, who is playing at the top of his game.
Okay, with that, I'll ask you, who do you think is coming back in the fold? We got Harris and Stevens. Who do you think? Do you think Cohen and Mayer are both back in Saskatchewan? What's your gut say?
I don't have a real read on the quarterback situation in Saskatchewan. I think Jake Mayer is as good a backup quarterback as you'll find anywhere in the CFL. Now, I was fairly low on him as a starter, but he was a competent guy when he had the reins in Calgary, and he took them to the playoffs. That can't be ignored. I think if Trevor went down for an extended period of time, it's nice to have a guy like Harris. Cohen, I think, has potential, but are you ready to move on and and take away that security blanket in order to give him a bigger opportunity. To me, that's a big ask for a guy who's yet to prove himself. I'd try and keep him around as that fourth guy. I'd spend the money to stick him on the one game if it didn't anger the PA too much for another year. But you can't trade in security at that position. And we know whether it's 2 games or whether it's 10 games, at some point you're going to need your backup quarterback in the CFL.
I agree 1,000%. I think everybody's
it's a great move.
agreeing
with kind of what he said. It's like, well, we're not really super confident yet. And
no, I mean, like you say, it's a great opportunity or great option at backup quarterback. You're going to need him for a game or two somewhere. He brings a lot of experience to it. Then we go to Trey Ford. Where does Trey Ford land? What crystal ball do you have for him?
Winnipeg.
Well, I think there's a couple of options. I think it makes a lot of sense to put him in a place where, there is a Canadian ratio connection. Could he land in BC? Now, this is not insider info as the Vancouver guy. I have not had this conversation with the Lions because obviously that would be tampering at this stage. But if you've got
$5,000, if you know it anymore,
it's not a big deal.
If you've got Nathan Rourke as your quarterback and he's a mobile guy, it makes sense to have a backup who is Canadian, because then you don't have to change your ratio if he goes down. They tried to do that the first time around with Michael O'Connor back in 2022. Ford, I think, is a very different type of QB than O'Connor was, but you can do some interesting things with him, and I don't think they are thrilled with the 2 guys that have their contracts expiring here in terms of their backup quarterbacks, Jeremiah Mazzoli and Chase Bryce. Mazzoli's a great leaguer. I don't know that he has what it takes to be a quarterback in the CFL anymore. And Bryce has been given his opportunities. They've waited around for 3 years, and he hasn't shown enough to be handed the reins as the primary backup. To me, that would be an option. I think Winnipeg is also an option, because they're going to have to move on from Zach at some point down the line, and they've got Taylor Elgersma in the pipeline, who is also a Canadian. So those are options that make a lot of sense. And if Hamilton loses Taylor Powell as their primary backup, I mean, that would be sort of a homecoming for Trey Ford, as it were, if he ended up out there, a kid from Niagara Falls. I see that as a potential option as well.
Okay. All right, JC Abbott from 3DownNation is joining us, and then I want to leave you just on your thoughts on the reports Montreal releasing linebacker Darnell Sankey.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense from a team building standpoint. That's not a shot against Sankey. He's been a fantastic middle linebacker, an all-star caliber guy on that defense, a true leader. But you have Jeffrey Canton-Arku, who is a first-round pick from 2 years ago, highly productive in a rotational role. I think if you look at the grading, if you trust Pro Football Focus or whatever, somebody who on a play-by-play basis has one of the highest grades of any linebacker in the league and has certainly made an impact as a situational pass rusher, he's ready for his opportunity. And by making that a Canadian spot and extending him early for a contract that's, I'm sure going to get him paid nicely, but isn't going to destroy your bank account, I think you set yourself up better as a team with a more flexible ratio, the ability to play some Americans in other spots. That was always the plan in my mind when they drafted Canton-Arku, and I think this is the fruition of that.
Cool. All right. Well, your proximity to the border there, then, does that automatically make you a Seahawks fan?
It does not. I grew up a Green Bay fan, okay. Just because I loved watching Favre play when I was a kid. Now he's perhaps colored my opinion of him a bit in the years since then, but I still have a little bit of a candle for Green Bay.
I was going to say, if you're a Seattle fan, maybe go down and watch Old Man Rivers. If he gets in the lineup this weekend, yep. That'll be interesting. JC, thanks so much for taking some time today, shedding light on that. That was great, and we'll catch up again for sure.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It was a pleasure.